Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Politics with Laura May Lindo. I am your host, Laura May, and I want to begin by offering this reflection. Here we are, on land held down, cared for, loved, and stewarded by the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. And today I'm actually going to be talking about financial literacy and financial education, especially during today's climate where we're seeing rising costs, whether it's food, gas if you're driving, even our bus pass costs are going up these days. And when I think about some of the important teachings that we have from experiences of Indigenous communities on this land, I can't help but imagine that the way that legislation has been crafted has actually resulted in a lot of the scarcity that Indigenous community members have had to navigate. And I can't help but believe that there was some intentionality in there. If you think about the reality of residential schools being legislated, those residential schools only taught Indigenous kids what they felt, they being the system, felt Indigenous community members needed to know. But what is amazing about this history is that Indigenous communities, on their own terms, in their own ways, taught stories and examples and experiences of abundance. And a lot of the discussions around what's taught, thinking about 7 generations before, 7 generations behind, are built on abundance. And it's that abundance mindset that has actually allowed Indigenous communities to stand up in the way that they have today and demand something different, not just for themselves, but also for the rest of us. And so I want us to keep this idea of energy and mind shifts and ways for us to thrive despite what's happening around us central in our discussion when I bring on the fabulous Brittany Blake, who will be talking to me a little bit more about money, finances, and all of the important things you need to know, especially today. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. And yay, Brittany! Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me.
Listen, folks, I am on a learning journey with Brittany right now, and you are going to hear all about it. But we're going to start off with an article that I read. It came out on December 1st with the CBC. And the amazing Kate Beuckert, if you don't know Kate, Kate is awesome, reported that more than 1 million people in Ontario have needed a food bank in the past year. And that number was based on the annual food bank usage report it's called the Hunger Report from Feed Ontario. It's the 9th year that they've actually done this. And if my memory serves me correctly, they said 8.7 million visits to food banks happened between April 2024 and March 2025. When they were looking back at some of their earlier data, they were explaining that that was an 87% increase since 2020. So we're hearing a lot about, especially when it comes to finances, managing your family, etc. You should always have this emergency fund. And I know we should have this emergency fund, but my heart worries that people have used their emergency fund and now they're kind of at a loss, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to start us off there with this reality and just ask you, like, what do we do? Solve our problems, Brittany.
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
I find that, the emergency fund is no longer the intent of emergency. The emergency is now are people choosing between paying their mortgage and their rent or putting food on the table. Yeah. And that, my heart bleeds as well, because I don't think that should be the emergency that fund is meant for.
Yeah.
That fund is supposed to be meant for if your car breaks down, or if somebody in your household gets sick or injured, or you're unable to work. And I think part of it is it's not just people living paycheck to paycheck. We're under that now. And thank goodness for the resources that do exist.
Yeah.
I have a lot of experience with helping people access those resources. I'm not surprised, which is the disheartening part.
Well, and I know that I'm speaking to you in your current role as a senior broker, but prior to this, the work that you did had a bit of an eye or an understanding of what was happening at the food banks, right?
Yes.
Like, talk to me about that a bit.
Yeah, so I worked in the mental health and addiction sector, and part of my role was to connect people to other community resources. And food banks and food services were one. And throughout my time, I would work with youth predominantly, but we were using the school resources in their food programs. We were using community food banks. I never worked in this region, but I got familiar with a lot of the other services, and at times the resources were struggling, right? Because people become unable to give because they're having to keep it for their own home. And I do see a lot more community connections nowadays because people are talking about and asking for the help that they need. And there's a relatability now, whereas I think prior in my experience there was a very and I do think there is still a lot of shame associated, and I wish that were to be eliminated because we're all on this earth to help each other out.
Well, and I want to step back to that, like come back to that idea, the shame around accessing the food bank, because from my prior role, when I was an elected official, I was part of that machinery that I have to tell you, like, we look to that machine to make sure that these gaps aren't near as big. And so one of the other things that always worries me is that the food bank that used to be something that was put into place for emergency circumstances is now becoming like it's an essential part of our community. And so I worry about that. In a perfect world, what would we want to see, whether it's from, we can talk about it being from government, just like amusing. What is it that we would want to see? Because some people have actually said to me when I was in that elected capacity that the advocacy to give to food banks was actually increasing some of that problem. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have that as an emergency, but if we don't have it without an understanding that part of the issue is that the systems around us aren't working. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So when we start fighting for the Band-Aid, the gaping wound underneath it is just getting bigger.
That's a great visual of that.
Kind of gross, but
I think part of it is when you look at food from a system, food shouldn't be a systemic problem or solution. Food is our essential right, and it's a basic need. And if we're not meeting our basic needs, well, then that's where an increase in other things come up. And I think when you look at the basic needs of housing, food, and I believe relationship is also one of those. I think if you look at togetherness, that's where I go, is how can we collectively work together? And I don't think a system that's broken is going to be the solution. I think we have to think outside the system, which is very different. Right? And I think sometimes we can turn to government and blame them or look to them for solutions, but I think it actually comes down to how do we connect to each other and support each other more. So if I can give a little, that's better than nothing. Right?
I also think to myself, the image that we have about government is though, in my language also perpetuates that, right? The machine of the government. But it's just a bunch of people. Like it's literally people that could be part of that community network. And I think sometimes when we imagine moments, especially during elections, where you have the folks that are interested in being your elected representative, knocking on doors and talking to people. Those are the moments where I feel like government is working, where they're part of that community fabric. But those are also the moments where they see what is happening in their communities in a real way.
Yeah.
And so the other question that I have for you around this, if we see these kinds of gaps and we recognize that the usage, for instance, for the food banks is going up, we're also seeing more encampments popping up. We're seeing issues where before you could save to buy a house, or if you didn't have the money, you could rent. But now we're hearing that you can't even afford to rent, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the community initiatives then that you've been a part of, or what has drawn you to like becoming a senior broker in the midst of these kinds of things? Why has that been the path that you've taken?
Well, we need another segment for that whole story. Here's the truth about it is when I was in mental health and addictions, I could help people in one lane. And a lot of what I saw was unless people could afford alternative lifestyle choices, that could include private therapy, right, versus a nonprofit organization, or it could include different surgeries or different medical treatments, right? Everything ultimately came down to their financial position, affordability, and choice. And something that I have learned to appreciate is the more choices people feel and are aware of that they have, the more that they can actually feel empowered. And that's ultimately what I love about my career, is that I'm just here to provide choices that people didn't even know existed.
And that's interesting too, because when you, especially when we're seeing the stats that it's different people that are accessing food banks than we've seen in the past. So there's a shift even in the population and the particular needs, right? But when you're in that boat, you don't feel like you have choices.
You don't, no. You know? And I've had friends of mine talk to me about, well, I had to pay my mortgage, but then I had to go to the food bank for my kids, right? And I can appreciate that is a choice, though. And thankfully, you have the choice, and our community has those resources for you to choose to go. There are some people who, for whatever reason, are still choosing not to use the resources that exist. Right? And I think that as long as a collective and as a community, we are taking away the shame. Right? The more people that talk about it, I think we can look at it in two different ways. We can look at it that, yes, the reality is more people are struggling, more people are having an income problem or a cash flow problem or don't have the emergency. Yes, that can all be true. But it can also be true that the more that people are openly sharing, hey, I had to access the food bank, I think it allows others to access the food bank. It allows others to be able to connect to each other and say, yeah, this is where I'm at too. It's kind of the mental health movement as well. The more we talked about it, the more people were talking about it. So if we're talking about it, then people know that those resources exist. Therefore, you have more choice to go.
It's funny too, because at one point when I worked at Laurier, at Wilfrid Laurier University, I was the Director of Diversity and Equity, and I oversaw the gendered violence prevention portfolio. And I remember we were doing some training. We were being trained by the Sexual Assault Support Center in Waterloo Region. So as they were doing the training, they said to us 1 billion times, the more you speak about this, the more what was hidden will become visible. So you'll actually see numbers rise, you'll see patterns that will disturb you, but the reality is until you can see it, you can't address the problem.
Exactly.
Okay, this is awesome. We're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to shift us into another discussion around this, because I think that piece is so important. Once it becomes visible, what do we do next?
Yeah.
And so we're going to be right back after this break, and you, my friend, get to eat some bread.
Yay!
Yay! We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Okay, right before the break, I think we touched on something that is so important. The notion that the problem can remain invisible, we can't do anything. And once it's visible, we're finally able to start to address it, right? So I'm just going to, for those that are watching, I will have the CBC report or the CBC article linked so that you can take a look at that. Inside that article, they speak about another report that was done at McMaster. It's a little bit older, 2022, but there was something that stood out for me, and it said 46% of those with stable housing said that they would, and this is a quote within the article, most likely be homeless without food bank support. And they were able to use the money that they would have spent on food towards their rent or their mortgage, right? So to your point, those choices that people are always sort of having to make. Right now, we are seeing food costs go up astronomically. Like, I can't believe how much it is to buy milk.
Yep.
Milk is nearly $7. Sometimes it's $8 in places, which is wild. The cost of gas, I can remember how much gas was when I was growing up. I cannot believe the numbers. We're seeing our housing costs skyrocketing. I am very curious, because you join me in being an eternal optimist. I think that's why I love you so.
Yeah.
What gives you hope when you're thinking about what's happening with families right now?
Yeah, I'll come back to that, because the one thing I want to point out is that you didn't mention income is also increasing. And this is where I think we have to bring light to our way of thinking hasn't been working. Okay. And what I mean by that is traditionally people will go to school again, go to school again.
So many. Yeah.
And then we're designed to go into the workforce. And if everything around us is increasing, but our ability to increase our income is not, that's why we're seeing all of these choices having to be made between rent or food.
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting to work, gas, public transit, right? So I think that those are really important pieces to also talk about. And then we'll come back to your original question, which now it's escaped
Don't
me.
worry, about hope. We're always going to come back to hope.
Yeah, we're always about hope.
That's who we are. Yeah.
So what does bring me hope is I do think that there is a shift in people learning how to not do things themselves, but figure out a way.
Yeah.
I have a saying in my mind that everything is figure-outable. So it should be added to the dictionary. I don't know if that word exists, but I think people have gotten to a point of desperation, and so they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And more people are talking about it, which we said before is a really good thing, even though it doesn't feel that way sometimes.
Yeah.
But when you bring things to light, then you can actually customize solutions.
Absolutely. And I think that that's the big parallel. Like so we started off and we talked really broadly. We were speaking very broadly about the government and these like gaps in our everyday, et cetera. And now as we get closer to thinking about what's happening in our own lives, in our own houses, with our own finances, it's the same kind of thing. Like I remember when I first met you, one of the first things that we did was we walked through a very close look at my finances. And folks, I want to be very, very honest. I'm a single mommy with 3 kids. I tell everybody, so now you all know.
Yeah.
And so I was scared to
Yes.
look at those finances and to see where I was at, because I was assuming that there was no way out. And so let's talk about that. Like, what do you do as a senior broker? What do you do? Because I think what you're doing is part of you're finding ways to help us build hope in places that feel like they're hopeless.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you just took the words perfectly.
Yeah.
In reality, this is part one of what I do. So the interesting thing is, in my previous career, I would literally be psychoanalyzing someone's thought process and their emotions and their behaviors and trying to create a plan customized for them. And the way that I look at this now is every single person is going to have a different financial plan.
Yeah.
So if we try to fit them into a box or a system, it's not necessarily going to work for everybody. And one of our missions is No Family Left Behind. And that's what ultimately gives me hope, is I have helped people who have a lot of money, and I've helped people who don't. And people always ask me, oh, who's your perfect person to help? I'm like, everybody? Like, it's so hard to be like, you know, we're not segregating anybody out from receiving the help. So that's ultimately what gives me the hope. And I've seen it. I've seen people from all different perspectives of their finances call me crying with joy and being like, you saved me. You saved my marriage. You saved me from having to go into even more debt, or you showed me the way. And I think what we do is we have to find out where we're at, right? It's the first step of anything is being okay asking for help and receiving the help.
Yeah.
And that is part of the hardest part, I think, for people, is saying, I need help in my finances. And it doesn't matter where you're at, saying that and acknowledging that that is something that I'm ready for, I want, I need, I'm craving. I just get really excited about it, because I think the more people that get to that place, the more families we're actually going to help, and then they're going to go tell more people that what helped them and what worked, and you know, that's where the power of compounding help comes in.
Yeah.
And so what do we actually tangibly do? Well, we take a look. First, we educate families. Primarily, I think we need to increase financial literacy. We need to increase the education around how money works, right? How money is a great tool, how it's a great resource, what you can do with it. But if we don't understand the core basics of our own finances, then we are one colossal experience away from chaos.
Yeah.
And that's what I've experienced that. And so what we do is we gather where things are at. You know, what are people paying for their bills? Do they know? Have they ever tracked it? Which can be very daunting if you're not looking at it. So having somebody walk with you, you know, reminding you that we're not here to judge, we're not here to place any blame or fault you for anything. It's just, hey, let's check things out. Right? It's like going to the doctor. You don't know your diagnosis before you go to the doctor. Why would you go to the doctor then? If you already know. So it's like, okay, let's look at where things are at. Let's see, let's assess things, and we try to look at everything, right? Where are our investments going? What is the rate of return, and what does that do for us? What insurances do we have in place? Where are we overpaying for insurances? Where can I ultimately save people money is the goal. Where can I save them money, and where can I get their money working better for them?
And I think there's 2 other things that, at least for me, my experience with you, there were 2 other things that happened that were really helpful. One was I recognized that I hadn't a clue what I was paying for in like group insurance for my day job. I knew I was doing it, and I was like, well, debt bad, insurance good. That was was literally all I knew. And so you were able to shed some light. So now what I find is fascinating is I get like the statement, and I understand some of the words, not all the words. But some of it, I'm like, wait a second. And then I have other questions. But again, had you not made some of that visible for me, I would have carried on in that invisible space, thinking that I guess I'm doing okay, but not really knowing, right? So without the knowledge, I didn't have any control over that.
What you just said there, if I didn't have the knowledge, I wouldn't have had the power. And that goes, I know it's kind of cliche, but it's knowledge is power. And so often in the financial space and in the insurance space, whether it's with an employer or not, my first group benefits plan or my first group RRSP, I just said yes. I didn't know what I was saying yes to. I think I was 21, right? But that's part of an issue, is that I was that I'll explain this short story if I can divert a little bit. You know, I've bought a couple homes before, and the one meeting I had, I remember, with one of the mortgage brokers, and I'm a person who asks a lot of questions. If I'm not asking questions, then we've got a problem. And I do that because I want to understand. I have this craving to understand. And I was in that meeting, and I remember I left the meeting feeling less incompetent, even though I was asking all these questions. But the words were all new. I had no idea what they even meant and how they pertained to this big, large purchase I was doing. And I was clueless, but I just said yes. And now being in the industry, it's like I was ready for more. I was ready for the information. And I think sometimes the patience and the time spent with us in that system is not given. Right? And same with you, right? That we took the time. We took multiple appointments. We went through things and were able to answer your questions and revisit them.
And until you experience, with new information, until you experience something, which the universe will make happen, you don't actually know. So I also sent many texts. Like, let's not pretend. I send many a text. Just asking, okay, what does that mean? And tell me what that thing is again. But it's starting, slowly but surely, it's starting to click. But that reminds me of something else that you said to me. Not the thing that I was going to say before, but yet another. It reminds me of the fact that we were never taught this. So there's an assumption that we make that because we put kids in school and they learned about numbers and math, that they understand finances and money. But that's not what happens. That's not actually what happens. Right? So the financial literacy piece is so important. And I remember, for those that are watching, I'm going to have a link to there was a financial education site, like a link that you sent me. And we talked about it in a webinar, actually. So I am going to make sure that anybody who's watching has a link to the financial education piece. That was with the World Financial Group. And also a link to the webinar that we did. And what I want us to do after the break is kind of shift once more, but into like my favorite part, right? And as I was driving in today, I was listening to something, and the person said, money is energy. And so really what you're talking about isn't trying to get more jobs to make more money, but it's to change your mindset and understand what your mindset is in the relationship that you have to money in order for us to move into another relationship with money.
My favorite topic.
It's my favorite. Okay, so we're going to be back right after this break. We are going to have more snacks in preparation for an awesome sauce conversation about money as energy. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Okay, we're going to switch gears. Now, I promised we're going to talk about energy and money and like a relationship that we have with money, but I want us to do so in the context of something that I saw the federal government doing, okay? So in Senate, there is a bill, S206, and for those watching, I promise you I will have a link to this bill. It is an act to develop a national framework for guaranteed livable basic income. Now, my understanding is that, and folks, if you watched last week, you know I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I'm trying, okay? At least I'm pretty, is what I often tell people. So my understanding of this piece of legislation is that they're calling on the minister to help the provinces create a framework for guaranteed livable basic income. Now, when I was in provincial parliament, one of the challenges that we saw during the pandemic was that everything had shut down, so people weren't able to be at work, etc. And the federal government gave out $2,000 to each resident, and the idea was, my sense was that, or what I recall from that time, was that you needed a minimum of $2,000 a month to survive, given the rising costs, food and all of this stuff. But what we saw in Ontario was that if you were on Ontario Works, if you were on disability, any of these like ODSP, any of these programs, you were making maybe $1,100 a month. If you had children, then it might be a little bit of a stipend extra, but you were nowhere near the $2,000 a month. And so from the pandemic, there was a call, again, because there's always a call to increase these kinds of services. So the federal government is now suggesting each of the provinces, the federal government will give a framework, and then that will help guide the provinces so that they can create something. Based on the conversation that we've been having, though, one, I realize not everybody knows what this livable income would be or what it would look like.
Yeah.
And also, if you don't have a relationship with money, and an understanding, like a shift from sort of like lack to wealth creation, and if you're already sort of inundated with notions of shame around money, which come from community, which come from the way the government talks about, like, everybody needs to get a job, just go get a job, because we've had that in the news lately as well.
Yes.
Then there's challenges like that this program would actually work. So with that as the backdrop, I'm curious about your sense of programs like this that come from on high for everyday people. What are some of the pitfalls that we have to watch out for? What are some of the possibilities in these kinds of government-led programs that are meant to help people?
Meant to help people is the ultimate piece there. They're meant to help people, and oftentimes, and I can only speak to what I've experienced and what I've seen.
Yeah.
When we're helping people with an income, that's fabulous. But there's so much more to someone's money and situation with money, that if you're given a lump sum of money and you actually have never been shown or taught or guided on what to do with that lump sum and how to create a division of, okay, this amount should be associated for this, or this amount should be associated for this. I think that the elimination of those type of support people or support programs is where we need to get back to. Like, I remember in high school, there was a program called Life Skills.
Yeah.
And you would learn how to take a flyer from a grocery store and make a plan for your meals based on what was on sale. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was eliminated, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it comes down to, what I saw was a lot of workers, so counselors, therapists, social workers, social service workers, were taking it upon themselves to teach their clients about money management and the actual tangible skills of managing money. Okay. But if they were never taught, then they're just going based off of, spreadsheets and budgeting and, the kind of the boring stuff, I'll say, right? Important, but it's kind of the boring stuff. Whereas I think the shift in talking about the gratefulness, like that's the number one piece, I think, is when people are grateful. And I'll share a quick story to divert us a little bit. Anytime that I get a bill or a payment or I owe money somewhere, I get so excited. Like I'm creating an energy shift because, and it's hard to do. But that's why I wanted to implement that in my own life, because if I'm going to talk about that, or if I'm going to help people through getting out of debt, even if it's a limited income, I want to be able to explain how that shift changed my life. So it's kind of two parts to answer your question. It's like, let's look at actual skill management and learn how money works. If we can invest $10 a month, what is that going to do at a higher interest rate versus a lower interest rate? And I think financial literacy at its core is one of the most important pieces that we need to implement. I think it should be accessible for everybody.
And I think that that's part of why the website that you directed me to, and so the link that I'll have shared with everybody, was so important, because you folks are doing what you can to get that out, and let people know that it's available. Like there's information available for people that can help. But it also gives me an idea for anybody who's watching, who's interested in advocacy, that one of the things that you can do is get in touch with the federal government, with your federal representatives, and ask for the life skills, financial management piece of building our relationship with money and with our finances become part of our system. So if they're developing the GLBI, then let's also make sure that there's an educational element that goes alongside it. So it's not just a transactional thing between government and the citizens, but it's also a relationship building thing. For those that are interested in provincial politics, you can do the same thing with your representatives. You can talk to your trustees while we have them. That is, we're just going to pause for a second. And you can also talk to your elected MPPs about wanting to have financial literacy back in the schools in a tangible way, not as a side thing, but as part of, these are things that we want to make sure anybody who's graduated from our schools has access to and understands.
And I just had a thought of Brittany back in high school days. And I think part of it is the framing of it, right? We have a lot of work that we get to do with financial literacy. Because, and I also think about, well, when I was in high school, would I have really cared? And the reality was, I had a part-time job. I have no memory of what I did with all of that money. I don't remember. What I do know now is that within my family, I'm teaching my stepdaughter. She's an entrepreneur. Like, I know she's gonna have some business of her own because she's already got lots. But she ran a lemonade stand. And we're teaching her about, the cost, and, oh, you didn't get the insurance, so you should have maybe had a permit, and so we'll take them out for that. And then what's your taxes? Oh, now you owe me because I bought the supplies. And, teaching her about that, I think she was excited. She was so excited, and she didn't like the taxes part. But, I think it's got to be fun for people, and it's got to be age appropriate and applicable. So how cool would it be if you had in elementary schools, you want to run a lemonade stand or a hot chocolate stand at Christmas, here's what you can do and here's what you need to know. And I think it would be age-based. Right? Because in high school, it also depends on where you're living. I worked with kids in rural communities, and they worked on farms. They worked in their community. Here in the region, I think there's a lot more of retail experience. But also then what do they do with those paychecks?
And can we find a way to teach them about each of those lines? So I'm going to go back to that the comment you made about the taxes. I believe, and I could be wrong, and folks, you can like message me on Insta if I am incorrect, but when people say, where can I give? Especially like we're in the holiday season. So where can I give? Everybody is like trying to find places to give.
I love that.
If people rethought what taxes are and understood how the taxes that are taken out are meant to be used in our public system, like within this particular system, and they saw it as I'm giving to others through this system, then who knows how they would feel. Like your energy would already shift in the way that you read your paycheck.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I do think that's a really important point, the shift in mindset and understanding. And if more of us understood that, then when we advocate for change in government or in those systems, we'd be doing it from a place of knowledge and community. Imagine that. Imagine that.
I can imagine that.
And so I want you to talk to me a little bit about that. Let's go a little bit deeper about that shift.
Okay.
So talk to me about what kinds of things you, in your role as a senior broker, help people do to shift their understanding of money as energy or the mindset around money.
So the first thing that I think people need to understand is if your nervous system is dysregulated, you will have so much resistance to what I'm about to say.
So pay attention, everybody. Take a second.
Yeah. And that is the core, is that you have to create a self-awareness. Yours is going to be different than mine because my entire relationship with money, my money story is completely different than yours. But my nervous system also is going to respond differently. So cool. When we first understand our nervous system, then you can implement things that will calm your nervous system, that will make you feel a little bit more at ease. And you can have chaos happening outside of yourself. You truly can, but you can have inner calmness and inner peace, but that is a practice. And when I say practice, it's daily, devotional, intentional awareness, and it's messy. It's messy, you know. It's not a great time. I don't want people to think that, you know, changing your energy is easy, snap of the finger. It's inner work. It's inner healing. It's healing wounds and things that challenge you and your beliefs. And that's where one of my hopes would be that our system didn't put on these beliefs, or people would take beliefs and really embody them. I think that's one of the root causes of unorganized energy around money. So that's number one, is recognizing what your central nervous system does, because that's a physical feeling. Right. And you just took a deep breath, so it's like something is moving within you for that.
Absolutely.
Right.
The
second is thought awareness. And really, really diving deep into what are your actual internal thoughts around money and you with money. When you think about Laura May and money, what actually comes up? And you keep going deeper and deeper into that thought, because that's going to tell you a lot about how you think about it. Which in turn creates the feelings.
So that conversation is so real for me. So for those that are watching, like real things that happen when I'm driving with my kids and we drive past like the gas station and you see the gas has gone up, those inner dialogues about, oh man, I should have gone yesterday, because that's lack. Right? My youngest is particularly interested in the Grinch socks that could potentially be at McDonald's.
Okay. Yeah.
So every time there's we're driving in the car and there's a McDonald's around the corner, there's a conversation, and my initial reaction is the one that I have to catch.
Yes.
And so that is one of the things that I'm very grateful to have met you, because those are some of the things that I'm working on. But I tell you folks, as my mommy says, I tell you that to tell you this, it is real work. It is messy at first, but then it gets fascinating.
It's so much fun.
Like, isn't it?
It's
because
so much
it's
fun.
Fascinating. Because if you were to ask me, Laura May, what's your that relationship with money, and imagine yourself with money, I'd be like, yes, I'd be the richest, woo woo, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But that's not really how I feel.
No.
Like, it's not.
Most people, it's too much outside of the logic. It's not logical, right? Because it's emotional.
Yeah.
And that is what energy around money actually creates, is that the thoughts create the energy.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll use this because it's the easiest description. When you receive a notice or you owe money, what is the first thought that you have? It's, oh, someone's taking it away from me.
Yeah.
It's leaving me. I have to let it go.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and this is the practice that I had started doing, was my husband was, he didn't know that I was doing this work. So bless his heart. But I would get a bill in the mail, or like a utility bill or whatever it is, and I would be like, yay! I'm so excited I get to pay this bill. And then I would be so grateful that I had the opportunity to pay the bill that I was using the energy for, or the water for. And I created a gratitude. And trust me, it's hard to do when you're not in a good financial position. But that's when it matters.
Well, and along those lines, in my mind, because I took you up on that.
Yeah.
So in my mind, the other thing I remind myself of is that when I give my money to that organization, because I've paid the water, the light, the gas, the whatever, there's somebody out there that got paid.
Yeah.
Like they have a job attached to that, and so they got paid, and then they were able to do something a little bit extra, hopefully with their fam. And so there's like an ongoing, it becomes this community type thing. I do want to pause that for 1 second just to say this out loud, because we have come to my favorite part of the episode. I ask every single person this question, and I think that it ties in perfectly with where we're at with this conversation. If you could snap your fingers and you could make one system change, what would it be?
Well, I'm gonna do two.
Okay. Well, listen.
So the first one, I believe, is already in existence, and that is to make financial education accessible to everybody. So we want to spread the news that we host free financial webinars for basic financial education.
Beautiful.
Because I think everybody needs and wants and craves that.
Where can people see that? Can you send me a link and then I can put it on the site as well?
Yeah, we host them all the time.
Okay.
We got to get people registered.
Okay.
And so yes, we can connect on that.
Beautiful.
And the second thing is, if I could actually have a magic wand, it would be that every human would have the belief system that they can do it too.
Yes.
Whatever that may be, whatever financial goal that they may have, that get out of debt, save for retirement, have that emergency fund, earn more money, and just live out the best life, and that money is not the problem. That they don't have that financial stress. That would ultimately be, if everybody had that belief system, that core belief, that value, I think that our world would function very differently around money and finances.
Oh, Brittany, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you again so much for all that you do.
Welcome.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Was that not an amazing conversation with Brittany? Come on now, folks. Listen, I promise you I will have links to all sorts of interesting things. So we'll have a link set up for you to go and take a look at the CBC article that I discussed. There'll be a link to the report from McMaster so that you can get a sense of what was happening in that particular situation. They're looking at Hamilton. And if you don't follow me already on Instagram, please do. It is everydaypolitics_official. You can reach out to me there and let me know if you're interested in taking part in any of the free financial literacy opportunities that Brittany was talking about. I can get you in touch with the right people, we can sign you up, and we can start you on a brand new relationship and journey with finances. So have an amazing, amazing day, and we'll see ya next week.